Welcome to Kozversations, where your host, Carl Kozlowski, talks with the world's most interesting people. And now, this week's Kozversation. Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to another edition of Kozversations, coming to you from luxurious studios of Radio Titans in Los Angeles. And I'm your host, Carl Kozlowski, as always, bringing you some of the most fascinating people from the worlds of pop culture, politics, and beyond. And today I'm bringing somebody that is indeed quite fascinating. His name is Matisyahu, and he's a rapper who has made quite a splash on the world scene since his debut record in 2005, which yielded the top 40 hit King Without a Crown and became a smash around the planet. He has since made another 4 albums, as well as numerous concert videos and worldwide tours. His latest album is called Undercurrent, and he's presently on a worldwide tour that brings him to Discovery Ventura in Ventura, California on April 7. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Matisyahu. So, thanks for taking the time for talking today. I wanted to ask, first of all, that, the new album Undercurrent, you're on tour supporting it now. How do you feel that it reflects, growth or your style? How has it changed with this particular album? What do you feel that it offers to your longtime fans and people that might be checking you out for the first time?
It was like 2 or 3 questions there.
Sorry.
How has it changed, and what is it offering my fans?
Yeah, basically. Sorry about that. Yeah.
That's okay. So part A would be this record in particular. It's made with a band, a live band. The process for making this record, it was born out of improvisations from being on the roads for a better part of a year. So I was on tour, and then I've noticed that I'm really enjoying more than playing the songs or trying to recreate the songs how they are in the studio. Finding that I'm actually enjoying a lot more of the improvisation. So my live show started to take a heavy turn in that direction. And so I wanted to make a record that was more, I guess, in line with what it is that I'm actually doing on tour during the shows. So rather than going in and making 3-4 minute tracks that are, made in the box, typically, like when I say in the box, I mean, digitally programmed drums and bass and, instruments, keyboards, overdubs, guitars. Instead, I wanted to make a record that had more of a live sound. And so basically started by recording the shows the year leading up to the recording of the record, and then we went straight off tour into a studio and listened back to those improvisations, and then started to sort of loosely build forms based on those improvisations, and then went into the studio and recorded a record, just instrumental of basically these improvisations where we even improvised in the studio. And those came out to be on average like about, 7, 8, 9 minutes a track. And that was before I ever put any vocals down on it. And then I took that, 65 minutes worth of music and wrote melodies and lyrics and choruses, vocals, and put all the vocals on it after that. So it's much different way of making a record than I ever have made one before, and I think that we show is the band and the live element to what we do, the creative nature of what we do live. And in terms of the fans, my fans range from a real wide variety of places, but I think the main thing that most of my fans will connect with on this record is the wide variety and the span of the music and the creativity of the music. So whether you're a Matisyahu fan because you like the shorter, more uplifting songs like One Day, or you like the older songs like King Without a Crown, or you like more of the jammy element, or you like more of the reggae element, or the hip hop element. So these songs kind of take you on a journey, and they really traverse through this whole musical landscape of all these different genres and combining all these different sounds. So I feel like most people will find something in it that they like, even if it's not like it's not really a purist art form. You know what I'm saying? It's not really just purely reggae or purely hip hop. But I think that most people and fans of music in general today like a wide variety of music, and I feel that as an artist, that's kind of what I represent to a lot of people, is someone that crosses and blends and can create a bridge into all these different sounds and styles.
Gotcha. Okay. So, did you always love rap and reggae when you were growing up? I know that you got into the performing and with your faith after having some rough aspects of your childhood.
Yeah, I started out. I grew up listening to mainly pop music as a little kid, and being influenced by the music of my parents, which was mostly classic rock, Grateful Dead and such. And then I guess when hip-hop music started getting big in the mid-90s, I started listening to hip-hop music because that's what all my friends were listening to. And I found my love for hip-hop music as well. So I've always been interested and into all these different genres and styles of music since I was a little kid.
So then, when you were a teenager, you were going through some troubles with drugs, and you went into you found your faith, and you started your journey through Orthodox Judaism and everything as a result of getting into outdoor camps and things like that. So where did the music, as far as like performing, sync up at that time in your life? Did it come later, or were you already performing while you were going through that?
I was always into performing. Like, even when I was a kid, I was in plays and I was in musicals and I was in a gifted acting program. And I always loved music, and I, going to dances and dancing, and I was always pretty musical, and I was always kind of into performance since I was a young kid. When I really started rapping and freestyling and stuff like that, and beatboxing was in high school, I guess you could say, and then once I left school and I was living in Oregon when I was 18 years old is when I started performing at open mic nights and put together my first band.
Okay, so then what about how did you reconcile like hip hop and reggae with your passion for Orthodox Judaism? Because it would seem to be a real culture clash, yet you've always made it a really fascinating success.
You're cutting out. It's becoming harder and harder to hear you as the conversation is going on. I think I got the gist of what you were saying.
Okay.
But I didn't hear the very last part. Let me say it back to you. You're asking me where or how I connected Orthodox Judaism with hip-hop and reggae?
Yeah, basically, because some people, it would seem to be a culture clash, but yet you make it work so well.
Yeah, so basically there was a bit of a clash. But in some ways, the two things were interspersed with each other for a very long time for me. So, for example, when I started listening to Bob Marley, started listening to reggae music, and hearing all the references to the Old Testament, I immediately found a connection between the Old Testament and Judaism and reggae music. And so even though there weren't people around me necessarily that would make that connection, it made sense in my mind. And listening, let's say, to the lyrics of Bob Marley, about finding your roots and your culture. So as I started to mature a little bit, I started to realize that didn't mean necessarily finding his culture, his roots, but that lesson that Bob Marley was teaching was to know your own history. So that in some ways prompted me to start looking into my own history and culture as a Jew. Now, as I did that, I started to explore, obviously, Jewish culture and lifestyle as well as religion and spirituality. But I found that the reggae music was what spoke to me in some ways a lot deeper than, let's say, quote-unquote Jewish music, whatever that might be. So I began to choose and figure out where I can combine these things because, holy shit, this lady almost got hit with a kid. Because for me, basically, again, it was like my whole life was about combining different things and not really being a purist in any one way. So, for example, like I liked, Fish, but I also like rap music. So where could I combine those two things? So I liked Judaism, or I was interested in learning about Judaism and prayer. However, I still liked listening to reggae music. How could I combine those things? So I didn't really feel like there were any rules when it came to this. Like you have to be just this or just that. I always kind of felt that as long as these two things or three or four or five or whatever amount of things can exist in an authentic way inside me, then they can exist in the world. Now, there was a time when I was very, very religious where a lot of people were telling me, you can't do these things. You have to be a purist. You have to just do this and just do that. And basically, to honor the tradition and the path that I was on, there was a time where I did do that, where I put down my records and I focused on just trying to be one thing. And I felt that actually, in some ways, even though it was difficult for me, it helped me to basically to understand, in truth, the Hasidic lifestyle and the way of being a Hasid. But then again, the time came where I said, okay, now it's time for me again to expand my horizons and to try to find myself in all of this.
Yeah, so then do you ever feel any backlash or regret any pressure that you may have gotten from fans who demand more rigid standards on the faith then since you embrace that? Do you get it? Do you get a lot of people like bugging you like, well, you're not doing this enough or that enough, or are people pretty cool?
Well, there's a combination. I mean, I think that there was a time when I was more concerned about what people thought. I was focused on trying to basically get people to like me or get more fans. And so I would read the comments and I would be sensitive to them and concerned, and I would get frustrated or my feelings hurt, feeling that people didn't really understand what I was doing, or they didn't like what I was doing, or I was going to lose fans or have less people at the show. But at a certain point, I kind of made peace with it, and I said to myself, you're not going to be happy if you try to make everybody happy. What you have to do is remember who you are and remember that no one came to any of your shows or bought any of your music because you did what they wanted you to do. This was always about you doing you. And that's what I did. And so I sort of had to relearn that lesson and constantly have to. And I try to stay off the internet and not really read comments. I find